From setting records for knocking out world champions to making headlines for his latest trash talk, Conor McGregor is always on the tip of everyone's tongue. So today, let's check out how everybody's been reacting to his return to the UFC. But before that, let's start with his matchup against Michael Chandler.
Team McGregor versus Team Chandler. This season premieres Tuesday, May 30th and runs through Tuesday, August 15th.
Okay, we all know that Conor is going to be making a return to the octagon soon enough. Still, there might just be something even more exciting going on. See, according to the latest reports, Conor is going to be standing as the opposing coach to Michael Chandler on the latest season of The Ultimate Fighter. The best part is that after the show is done filming, the two coaches are going head-to-head against one another in the octagon.
At the end of the season, McGregor and Chandler will fight live on ESPN Plus pay-per-view, and I do not have a date.
I don't know about you, but this might be the most genius way to build hype for a fight. I mean, think about it. We're going to spend a good few months watching the tension build between them. Then, almost straight after the show wraps up, we get to see them go at it. What could be better? Now, I'm sure you're wondering what everyone's been saying about all of this. Well, to say that they're hyped would be an understatement. Look, it's no secret that Conor McGregor is one of the most electrifying fighters in the UFC. Even though he's taken a ton of time off, he's still one of the most popular fighters out there. It's just the way his press conferences are so engaging and his fights are always entertaining. Almost everybody in the UFC is hyped to see Conor fight again.
It's all over! Conor McGregor is a UFC interim featherweight champion!
The last time he stepped into the octagon was a bit of a letdown. He got severely injured and no one's heard from him since.
McGregor went backwards. They both threw.
At least, that was the case until now. Dana White recently confirmed that once McGregor and Chandler are done coaching the 31st season of the TUF, they're going to head to the octagon to battle it out. There's no doubt in my mind that the fight between those two is going to be one of the biggest events of the year. Even though it's been a while since we've seen him fight, everyone's still as hyped as ever to see what Conor can bring to the table. His influence has reached so many people that even YouTubers have an opinion on Conor's upcoming timeline. The most popular opinion comes from the bad boy himself, Jake Paul. Now, the problem child had a few words to say about McGregor's upcoming return to the octagon. See, Paul has managed to make a name for himself in the combat sports community with the numerous exhibition fights he's fought in. So after beating a few MMA legends in a boxing ring, he had a few things to say about the hype surrounding this fight. He talked about how hyped MMA fans are for the fight, even though both fighters have a pretty bad record in terms of their recent fights. Yep, both Chandler and Conor went winless in their last few fights, with the latter ending up seriously injured. Yet, despite all this, their fight is still the talk of the town. Paul continued his argument and talked about how UFC fans should take a page out of the MMA community's playbook and learn how to support their fighters more. I guess what he wanted to impart was whether or not you think a fighter is good at what he does, the least you can do is cheer him on. Now, you guys have probably ended up with a big question on your minds, which is, what's the rest of the UFC community got to say about this upcoming fight? Well, most fighters are taking this opportunity to diss both coaches as much as they can. While some fighters have earned the right, the others aren't making a whole lot of sense. See, I get that Dustin Poirier has a bunch of stuff to say. Both Conor's and Chandler's most recent defeats have been at his hands.
His face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. Who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows the triumph of achievement.
So, to see him tweeting about how the upcoming season is the All My Children edition is kind of funny. Though, for some reason, Michael Johnson decided to hop into the mix and named himself the granddaddy. While the tweets themselves have been hilarious, I'm curious to see whether Conor will take the time to respond to any of them. Other fighters have kept their disses pretty low-key. A good example of this would be Diana Belbita. She just made a harmless joke about how Michael Chandler will probably end up droning on and on with his speeches. Though, with all that being said, there's an even bigger question looming over everyone's heads. Of course, I'm talking about who would end up winning the fight.
Ultimately, you always think always the negatives that come from losing a fight. You know, obviously I had my sights set on.
One of the biggest reasons why this fight is so hyped is because nobody knows who's going to end up winning the fight. See, both McGregor and Chandler have similar records when it comes to how they performed the last time they both stepped into the octagon. They are both pretty out of it, especially Conor.
Stoppage! Doctor stoppage! Doctor stoppage! They're telling doctor stoppage!
So, after a long time, there's no real underdog in this fight. It could swing either way. What makes the whole situation even spicier, however, is the fact that Conor and Chandler are going to be going up against each other in a mental battle for months while filming The Ultimate Fighter. That'll build up even more tension for when they finally step into the octagon. In the end, it'll come down to who wants the win more. Whether Chandler wants the glory more than Conor, or vice versa, I am rooting for Conor.
Coach first of all, and then as a fighter.
I like Michael. I had a good little buzz with him yesterday. I've no issues with him at all. I think he's a good fighter.
But that's only because, for me, it's been too long without seeing the Notorious up there with the big boys. That being said, all of this brings us to an interesting thought, which is whether all this hype will even be worth it in the end. Honestly, the way the UFC has been marketing this whole thing has gotten everybody hyped to see what happens.
But badass events lined up. I'm pumped. So what you need to do is plan which ones you want to go to, and I will see you at the fights.
Besides, you have to think about the fact that these two men are two of the biggest superstars in the UFC right now. Sure, they haven't had the best year, but that could very well end up changing in the blink of an eye once this fight goes down. I mean, just imagine the hype for every press conference that Conor will do in the lead up to this fight.
I'm happy to give Nate the paycheck. Look into my eyes, little man. Little Brazilian. Ooh, vamos here.
A lot of people don't care about the outcome of the fight when compared to how many people tune in for Conor's press conferences. Of course, I'm not speaking for everyone here. I just mean that a lot of people are pretty happy to see what kind of trash talk Conor can come up with this time around. Honestly, if this fight goes like Conor's last few fights, then I'm down to tune in. Of course, there's the issue of Conor being viewed as a washed up loudmouth if he loses yet another fight. The way I see it, McGregor has a lot more to lose as opposed to Chandler. Even if Chandler ends up losing, the worst that'll happen is that he won't be considered for any more big fights anytime soon. Conor, on the other hand, if we're counting all the trash talk that's sure to come, will be looking to score a quick win if he wants to maintain his reputation as the Notorious. Anyways, regardless of how the fight ends up turning out, one thing's for sure, and that is the fact that this is going to end up being one hell of a pay-per-view. That was everything on Conor McGregor's upcoming return to the octagon.